So instead of the recording, have no fear. You'll see it says live on YouTube. We're not live on YouTube for everybody to see. We are live to a private link that I will share once we're done for benefits of those who want to go back and rewatch, or those who want to, for benefits of those who want to go back and rewatch, or those who want to, who can't make it today and just want to see what we did today. So have no fear. All right, so welcome again, Martha, and thank you once again for being here. It's really nice to have you with us today. For those of us who don't know, Ladies Arise, I'll talk about Ladies Arise first. Ife was supposed to do this part, by the way, so since she's not here, I get to have the fun opportunity of doing everything. So Ladies Arise is a club that I started sometime last year. I'm very bad with remembering what days this thing starts, but the goal of it was, I've observed a certain struggle with mostly visible minority women in Canada, trying to make some, meaningful strides in their career. And much more than that, beyond the career, it's also everything else that, shapes our reality as women, and the things that we go through as women in this country, and to help us navigate all of those different parts. Hello, everybody. Can we hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I have no idea what happened. My system just went off. Like, no warning, nothing. Everything is plugged in right where they should be, but it just went off. Okay. Fun times with technology, but I'm back. Okay, let me turn on my video here. I have no idea which camera I'm on now. Nope, wrong camera. Sorry. Okay, awesome. And we're back. And this angle looks weird. Great. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Sorry about that.
Oh, good. Joys of technology.
Yes. Joys of technology, indeed. Okay, so where were we? All right, so I was sharing about what Ladies Arise is about, and it is a community. It's a movement to just help visible minority women navigate not just their career now, but everything else that
that are unique to us, the challenges that are unique to us as women, who find ourselves in a country that is not, that is predominantly filled with people who don't look exactly like us. And it's also to help us get empowered with the right resources, the community, the network that we need, relying on one another to just help each other grow, and basically just to get ourselves equipped with everything that we need. And that's just a very, very, very short, quick overview of Ladies Rise. And part of it is we have our book club, and we read a book every month. We come together, we talk about the book, we talk about how we're going to apply those things in our lives, and we hold one another accountable to make that a reality for us. And that's what we have been doing through this platform. So today we have Martha with us in the house, and Martha is, she's still gonna get a chance to talk a little bit more about herself, but I have to pull up everything that I lost before. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. She's still gonna get a chance to introduce herself, but I will do a quick reading on her bio, and yeah, we'll do a quick reading on her bio just to help us learn more about her. So Mathurin-Moe. It just occurred to me that I never really knew how to pronounce that name, Martha. I'm sorry if I murdered it.
All good. It's totally fine.
So Martha was born and raised in St. Lucia, West Indies, and she holds a bachelor's degree from the Universidad Central de la Villa. Is it Villa or Villas?
That's it. Centro de las Villas, yes.
De la Villas, okay, Cuba. She's a master of education. She has a master's of education in educational psychology from the University of Regina here in Saskatchewan. And she is currently a PhD candidate in curriculum and instruction at the University of Regina. Martha's experiences consist of 10 years in banking and finance and human resources, as well as 8 years in international education. Currently, Martha works in leadership and development, and she can tell us more about that if she wants to. And she works on leadership programs for executives, managers, supervisors, and inclusion in the public sector, which is actually where I met her. And crazy story about that. But anyway, Martha is very passionate about teaching and focuses a lot of her research on cross-cultural communication, inclusion, inclusive teaching, and internationalization of curriculum. And that's a very big one, guys. I had the privilege of actually seeing what's being done by some students at the U of R on that, and it's a very interesting topic. During her free time, Martha enjoys cooking, reading, and traveling with her husband, Jared, and together they both live here in the city of Regina that we all know and love. And that's the brief that I have about Martha. She's still going to tell us a bit about herself, because right now I'm going to turn the conversation to her. And just with regards to expectations for today, this is going to be very conversational, all right? Because I want us to really dig deep into certain things around the topic. And the topic that we're going to be dealing with today, I want us to really dig deep into it, navigating white spaces, positioning yourself for promotion. What does that look like? But before we dig into all of that, Martha, can you tell us a little bit about your career journey in Canada? Like we've seen from your bio, you weren't born and raised here. So tell us a little bit about what the career journey for you has been, especially right now you work as manager within the public service. How did you get from the day you arrived this country to right where you are right now?
Thanks, Anne. It's interesting that you asked me the question about how did I get here? And the first thing I wanna preface this is my journey wasn't linear. Like, we think we have a starting point and then we go from here to Z. It was not a very linear process. I started off as a graduate student in the university, and I realized I only had classes like on 2 days, like on a Wednesday and a Monday night, I only had classes. So I'm like, what am I going to do with myself for the remaining 3 days of the week? And I went to the international office and asked for a volunteering opportunity, like if there was something that I could do to help out the community. And it ended up me getting a student assistant position by just asking, like, can I volunteer? And I was like, I wasn't asking for a job. I just wanted to volunteer because my primary focus was I want to get through my academic program, get done, and get home back to St. Lucia. So that led me to a position of working with international students. And I became really passionate about seeing somebody struggle because I could relate to them, because I came as an international student when I first moved to the university. And it was like, you would get asked these weird questions like, how come you speak English? And I'm thinking English is my first language, and like, why do you write so well? And it was really confusing for me, but I didn't know until I started doing my research. Is like that was microaggressions. Like I didn't even know that's what it was called, but I until I started to do my research. And then I became someone responsible for helping students transition into academic programming in the university. I did recruitment, and then I went into helping Canadian students study abroad, for them to understand what it's like leaving your home country and going to live somewhere else. And that blew my mind because it showed me how resilient and brave we are as immigrants or international students who come into a different space. Because I could have seen the struggles the students that I sent abroad experience, and they were like, I felt like a child. I didn't know how to take the bus or buy groceries or feed myself. And I said, well, put yourself in the shoes of somebody else who comes here, and that's a similar process that they're going through. And it doesn't mean that they're not smart or that they're deficient, is that they're having to learn a new system altogether, just like you had to. So that led me to be in charge of study abroad and mobility at the university. And I think I burned myself out, to be quite honest, because I was like traveling 8 out of 12 months. I was always gone. I was on the road traveling, recruiting, and I felt like I got a little bit burnt out, and I felt empty. It's like I want to leave a legacy behind me, and is this really what I want to do? And I really miss being in my field, which is actually HRD, which is human resource development, which is actually my area. So I wanted to go back into that area. And then an opportunity came up, and then that's kind of how I ended up where I am right now, working in building programs, doing curriculum design, and creating corporate strategies. That's kind of how I ended up here. Does that answer your question? I feel like I gave you a long spiel. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely, it did. And I don't know about everybody else, but I can tell you some things that are key things that I even feel like I pick out of that is that and guys, this is how this is also going to go, is that as she speaks, even the seeming even the most non-teachable or teaching words that come out of her mouth, I will find things in that I can throw back at us as lessons and things that we can learn. All right. And one of the key things that I think I want to even pull out from this is that, first of all, she said something about asking, right? She asked for something. She wasn't afraid to volunteer. Volunteering is a word that I feel like sometimes when we hear, it's kind of like, I'm just going to give up my time doing stuff and I'll get paid. What's the use, right? But there's value in volunteering. In your case, good news is you volunteer, you asked to volunteer and you got a job, which is great. But if you never asked, right? Think about this, ladies. If she never asked, if she just kept her thoughts to herself or, decided to, cower in from launching herself out there and saying, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to ask for this, right? And I like what you said about when you got to the point where you asked yourself the question, is this what I really want to do? All right. There is the importance of sitting down to chart your career course and your career path. And I feel like that's what I hear you say that you did. And because you were able to sit down and do that, it led you to the point where you are now, right? And part of it was where you are now wasn't a journey that happened the day you got the job. It was a journey that happened way before the day you sat down to ask yourself the question, is this what I want? And where do I see myself going? So it's really great. It's more than I asked for, really. That's
I, I do have a follow up to that. And I really like your piece about saying the asking. And I think we have this perception is that by being like by asking for something, you're asking for a handout and you're not. You are positioning yourself for an opportunity. Be it may not come right now, but I think the action of even asking is also part of the positioning that we want to get to, in setting us up for that next opportunity in our professional lives. So
absolutely. No, I love that. Yeah, the place of asking is part of the positioning. That is great. So I hear you talk about you started off as an international student. Right here in this crowd, we have a mixed number of people who came in as international students, people who came in as permanent residents, and people who grew up here. From the names that I see, I doubt that there is anybody who was born here. No, I don't see anybody who was born here, but I do see a good mix of international students and permanent residents and people who, were little and kids and they grew up here and sort of, really just got into the system. But I find that, and correct me if I'm wrong, hear from your perspective, because not only are you an international student, you're a woman of color, and you've dealt with women from different backgrounds and different ethnic groups as well. And from your experience and what you have seen with your journey as well, would you say that some of the obstacles that you see, that you experienced navigating your career path, well, share with us some of the obstacles, first of all, and then help us understand, are they peculiar to maybe just a certain group of people, or is it peculiar to most women who are in the visible minority category?
that's a really, really good question. So if I were to take a step back, I think our experience is a little more complex because we as women of color, we have intersecting identities. Like we are women, but we are also women of color, and we are also women who are immigrants or international. So we have to navigate multiple spaces as opposed to, let's say, a white woman has just to navigate the issue that she's white, but she may also have other intersecting identities that she has to. But ours is very peculiar, and it has a lot of historical context around how Black women have been positioned historically. We've always been positioned as the angry Black woman, or the difficult person, instead of saying, well, you are outspoken, you are assertive, you want to empower. So we have to navigate so many narratives of how we get positioned in the media, in our educational system. So a woman, we go through a lot of things. And I think we have to celebrate that we are brave, resilient women, because we have to navigate a lot. That's the first thing I'm going to put out there. The obstacles I think I faced was, there was a lot of self-doubt. I think when I came to Canada, I came from a particular way of working and a particular professional experience that I'd built over 10 years. And then I come here and I'm feeling like I'm starting at the very bottom of the food chain. If I were to be very honest, you feel like you're starting at the bottom of the food chain. And then you start to look around and say, I don't see people like me in the places that I want to get to. So you doubt yourself and you question your abilities and your capacity to say, I deserve to be in this space. You don't feel like you're worthy of being in those spaces. So that was the first thing. The second thing that I would say I navigated was, there were people who helped you and people who did not help you. And when I say this, here's what I mean. I think there are two kinds of people. There are the ones who open the door behind them and say, I don't want to be the only person in the room. Come on, let me bring you along with me. And there are others who, unfortunately, I will say, who I have had to struggle to get to where I am. So, well, why don't you do your own struggle? So, and I struggle with that because I feel like if I were to put this as an analogy, I would say, and please forgive me and bear with me, I would say it's like the field slave versus the house slave. I am better, I have everything. You are in the field, you have to do all the hard work. So I don't want you to have what I have. is kind of how I would position that in an analogy. And I really struggled with that. So I made a promise, and I experienced that too. And I made a promise that if I get into a space, I don't want to be the only person. I want to open the door behind me. And I really, really became very intentional of how I invested my energy and who I opened the door to. Because I remember I had a mentor who always said to me, and I'll explain to you the pieces about the mentor, who said, you have to pay it forward. If someone is invested in you, my only ask of you is you pay it forward. And I will never forget that lesson. And so I feel like I struggle with the self-doubt. I struggled with people closing doors instead of helping to open doors. And the third thing is I didn't take care of myself properly in the process. I felt I had to work twice as hard to be recognized, and I didn't take care of myself. And if you notice, the common thread that goes through everything is we make ourselves feel that we're not worthy, but we are actually worthy. We are. I call us, like, there was this really great article that calls us three cultured kids. Like, he said, you as a woman of color from another country, as an immigrant, you navigate your culture, you navigate the new culture, and you navigate the culture that you want to try to develop as a result of these mingling and assimilations. I don't want to use the word assimilation, those minglings of those various identities that you have to navigate. So I would say those will be my three big things, would be as obstacles. Does that answer your
Okay, great. Well, yes, and we're gonna do a little. This is, like I said, this is very conversational, and by conversational, it's not just between Martha and I, so it's between all of us here. So, ladies, please, in the chat box, Martha mentioned three things that she felt like were obstacles for her, and we're gonna get to how she navigated through some of those obstacles in a bit here. But in the chat box, she mentioned self-doubt. She mentioned people closing the door on her, and she mentioned not taking care of herself because she felt like she had to work twice as hard. Can you tell me which of these three you resonate with? And if you want to, if there's something that maybe you felt like you struggled with that isn't in one of those three options, please just tip top. Let's just quickly put that in the chat box. Let's see what we all dealt with. I'll put mine as well because I know I dealt with stuff too. Okay, self-doubt. Self-doubt is winning right now. And working twice as hard, I think, for me. Okay, I see a little self-doubt. All right, self-doubt. Wow. Okay, self-doubt is huge. Sometimes you justify it. Right on, sis, right on. Sometimes we even justify it. We explain it away, and we tell ourselves all the reasons why truly we're not equal to the task, why truly, we can't be the preferred, why truly we're not the faces they want to see. Thank you, ladies. I really, really appreciate that. So self-doubt, it's a huge one. Okay.
I have a follow-up comment about the self-doubt. It's so interesting. I had to feel really, really do some and a lot of deep work into where does this self-doubt come from?
Yeah.
And a lot of times there is a story or a narrative that is spoken or told about who we are. So before we even get the opportunity to show our skills, our abilities, somebody has already positioned us as a thing or in a particular, like they've put us in a box.
Yes.
So, and I think the self-doubt, and I'm not going to tell you I have figured out the formula for it. I work at it every single day, and I doubt myself sometimes every day. But is that you are put in a box, and the box is like, well, this is the only space you should occupy. And I call that, and I said, I want us as women to disrupt that and say, no, I don't want you to take control of my destiny. I don't know if any of you, I believe in a higher power. I believe in God. So I know the only person who has control of my destiny is my Father in heaven. So that's who I position and say, the only person that I need to worry about is what God thinks of me, and I'm not what anybody else thinks of me. And it's hard to get there, right? It's really hard to get there.
It's a journey, quite frankly. It is a journey. Because just even if you're at a certain level and you think, okay, I figured it out for this level, you know, as you get called into a higher level, it begins all over again where you start to question, okay, what if I flop? Why am I here? And especially when you look around the table you're sitting at and you're the only one that looks like you, you know, it makes it twice as hard, you know, but it's something that we definitely have seen as a pattern for a lot of women, and we need to work on. And to your point about being put in a box, I remember looking for something one time, and I was doing a very simple Google search and just looking for websites that I think talked about challenges that women face in career, you know, and I wanted to see what the general narrative was. And it was so sad to see that specifically I was looking for challenges immigrant women face. And it was so sad to see that the story was the same, you know, because they're coming from water zones, they're refugees. And I'm like, no, there are lots of women. And then there's conversations on many of them have little education because of the culture of where they're coming from. And this is so not true. I barely found any, even sadly, yes, even the Canadian website, you know, had that narrative. And for me, it was like, no, you have several streams of immigration, that there's a stream that actually targets skilled, highly skilled people, some of whom are women. But when this is the narrative that people have, then it makes sense why, you know, when I want to compete for certain positions, it makes sense why someone else will look at me and feel like I don't deserve that. And they try to box, you know, and try to almost tell me, stay in your place, you know, and that will feed into my self-doubts, right? So yes, Ife is imposter syndrome. Good to have you with us, by the way. Yeah.
So the box is like, the box is like bias. The box is like the biases that we have to disrupt, we have to call out and reframe, right? So I could go on and on about that, but that's what I would say now.
Yeah. So then if we have all of these obstacles, right? Kofo says fear of failing, which leads me to not even in the first place. Absolutely, Kofo, you're right. And that's what a lot of people deal with. But in all of this, like, I mean, the list can go on and on. But through it all, whatever that looks like for each person, how then do we get to the place where we get past all that rubble and then truly start to position ourselves for growth in our careers?
That's a really great question. If you notice, I kind of like started to position where I'm going. So the first thing I said is self-doubt, worthiness, you know, not getting stuck in the box. And that is the first piece that you have to work on to get you to positioning yourself. You have to know that what you bring to the table is of value. So you got to do the work. You got to do, I don't know, like my background is psychology. We do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. We talk about building a muscle. So it's doing the deep work of getting to know who you are and what are your skills and the strength that you bring to the table. But appreciating that, even though it may not be like the person next to you, but seeing the value of what you have. Like, I think a lot of us, and I come from like a colonized history. We have always been taught growing up that anything that's not made in St. Lucia, for example, was not good. So if you wanted the best, you had to go abroad. If you wanted to be seen like you've acquired and accumulated wealth, you had to have a certain level of status, socioeconomic status.
Relate to that,
right? So it was like, but that has colonized our mind to think that anything Western or anything from a bigger developed country is better. And I'm not trying to be hypocritical in any, because look, we are all in Canada. We all came here for a different opportunity, but we still need to remember that our history and our, you know, whatever we bring, our backpack of knowledge and experiences have value. And I think when we do that deep work and we understand and appreciate that value, that backpack we bring in, I would say give us like a really big game plan for being successful here. Because we have learned to navigate not only our culture, but we are navigating a new culture, and we're pulling the strengths from our home culture and what we're learning now to build a better version of ourselves. So the first thing is do the work. Get to know your strengths, get to know who you are, but know that you're worthy and know that you're not deficient. So disrupt the narratives or disrupt the stories that are being told about you. You tell your story. Don't let anybody take your voice away from you, but you tell your story. That's what I would say is the biggest piece to the positioning, because I think when you do the self work, then you are able to challenge the negative thoughts or the imposter syndrome or the self-doubt and say, you know what? I may not have 100% of what the qualifications are for this job, but I'm going to put my name in anyway and just see where it leads me. I don't know. So that would be, I would say doing the work is the first thing. And the second thing I would be is every opportunity is an opportunity. So like and I don't know how else to explain it. Like it may not be the perfect job that you want, but it's going to give you that experience or give you that backpack of knowledge to get you to the next level. So see every opportunity as an opportunity. And I have this colleague who would always say, be firmly flexible. And I'd be like, what do you mean by firmly flexible? And he would say, no matter what the situation or the opportunity that is, be open to it. Even if it scares you, if it doesn't scare you, I would be worried. It has to scare you because that's the only way you're going to try. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Well, to me, at least it does. Ladies, does that make sense? Please, let's be go if it makes sense. Feel free to say makes sense. You know, that's what we have the chat box here for. Okay. Thanks. I think you're set to message me directly, actually. I don't know if you're aware, but yeah, she says preach. Yes, she's preaching.
Oh, I sound like I'm preaching. Oh my goodness.
But yes, no,
I would love to hear your voices though, you guys. Like, I'm just curious.
You know what? Actually, yes, ladies, if you have a question, feel free to unmute or just signal, raise the hand, and I will call you to ask the question. It's okay. If you can turn on your video, it will be nice, but if not, that's okay again as well, I guess. But yes, I really enjoyed what you said with navigating the self-doubt and all of that, which is one, put in the work. You know, many of us are skilled at so many things that we don't even realize that we have. And if it's okay, I know you're the star person here, but I can actually share a very specific thing that happened for me with regards to this concept that you just shared, which is get to know yourself and the skills and value that you bring. And ladies, I can tell you without a shadow of doubt that when I sat down to do that work, it really changed a lot for me personally. And it was one day, I remember just sitting down with my resume, every single work that I had done in my entire life, volunteer, non-volunteer, all the way back to when I was in the university in Nigeria, which is where I think pretty much everybody here except yourself is from. And, you know, at the universities, we don't get to work like, you know, students do here where they school and work. For us, the focus from parents is go to school, and then when you're done, figure out your life when you're done. Actually, that's how it really plays out for most of us, you know. And so even things like you're doing extracurricular activities at school were frowned upon by some parents because they saw it as taking away from your education, you know. And so everything I did, I wasn't one of those kids who listened to that, you know, and honestly, it's one of the things that I'm grateful for, you know, but everything I did at school, the politics, everything, I went all the way back. And then I started putting down the different skill sets that comes from being in those positions. And when I was done, I remember saying to my husband, oh my God, everybody I have ever worked with in Nigeria, they owe me so much money because I can't believe I did this much. And one of my mentors, Martha knows, Derek would say, even the things that you do at home, many of us don't think about it. You're resolving conflicts every day between your children. You're resolving conflicts when you interact with other family members and you play peacemaker. You're resolving problems, that sometimes come at you, and you don't realize that these are all part of skill sets that can be transferred, or that speaks to the experiences that you carry, that speaks to that value that Martha is talking about, that you carry, that you have. And these are all things that come to the table. I remember saying to someone one time, I said, look, anytime someone tells you you don't have the experience they're looking for because you're new or because you've never worked in that position, tell them this. Tell them, well, I bring an international perspective that you don't have. Right? That in itself is value. I've seen a different way of doing this that you haven't seen and that you don't have, right? And so these are some of the ways that we can sit back and do the work. Because if you don't know the value you carry, to Martha's point, there's a narrative that has been written about you. And if you don't know what you carry, then how do you disrupt that narrative and tell them, no, this is not who I am. This is really who I am. So yes, it makes sense. Does anybody have any questions so far on everything that we've talked about up to this point? Like I said, it's a conversation today, and it would be nice to have people get the opportunity to share thoughts or to ask questions. Anybody?
I totally promise I don't bite.
No, I don't have any questions, if that helps.
Sorry?
I don't have any questions or anything.
Okay. Add. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Debbie. All right. Okay, so if there are no questions, I don't see anybody trying to unmute. Okay. Oh, Funks, go ahead.
Hi, Martha. I just had a question on, I guess, your progression in government. So I'm guessing when you left the banking sector, you didn't go directly into your managerial position. So what was that like? So how did you transition from whatever stage you got into government to where you're at right now?
Okay, that's a really great question. So I went into the post-secondary institution first, and a lot of my work did have overlapping working with government and stuff like that. So I already had an understanding of processes that may be similar, but it's still very different in that area. So what I did was I built a network. I tried to get to know my colleagues, like in the ministry that I worked with when I was in the university. I tried to build bridges and connections with them. So at least I knew some people when I went into public sector area. But like the promotional pieces, like I just put my hand up. Like seriously, I just said, I'll do it. If nobody else wants to do it, I'll do it. And it was like, sometimes it's like grunt work. I don't know if you know what I mean. I say grunt work is like maybe not the stuff that everybody thinks is glamorous or everybody wants to do it. I put my hand up and I would never back down from a challenge. So I think one of the things in the public sector that you really have to do really well is network. Network. Join a mentorship program. Get to know, and I remember I said, I'm new here. I don't understand systems, processes. Is there somebody I could connect myself with from my network who can introduce me to somebody that can help me build my knowledge and understanding of how things work within the public sector? Does that answer your question at all, Funky?
Yes, it does. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Precious, go ahead.
Hi, hi Martha. My question is on changing career path, because for me, I studied petroleum engineering in school, and lately it's been a struggle for me to figure out what I want to do. Although I'm in the process of figuring out what I want to do, but were you in that place where you weren't really sure of what career path to to choose, or I don't know, but you end up trying to figure out what career path you want to pursue, and how did you go about it?
Thank you, Precious, for your question. So what I will tell you is I'm still figuring out my career path. That might sound really controversial, but it is. There is no linear way of like going from stage A to stage B to stage C. And I really think we have been taught, like at least from St. Lucia and from where I come from, we were taught you go from entry level to medium management to like VP or whatever. There is no progressive straight line. It's ups and ebbs and flows, go back and forth, lateral, up, down. Like it's like a constant moving back and forth, sideways to up, then to down. And if I were to give it an analogy, so I actually completely went from being from psychology, from my financial background, went into post-secondary. And it was like a huge learning curve for me, because I had to learn what the processes were, why post-secondary was so different than post-secondary in the Caribbean. So, but I knew I always had one thing in mind. I want to walk away knowing that I have impacted somebody's life and I've helped them grow to the next level of whatever that looks like. So I know deep in my heart that I'm an educator. I know that to the core of my belief. The legacy that I want to leave behind me is that I've helped somebody on their career path to get to wherever that is. So that is the core foundational piece. It could be in post-secondary, it could be in public sector, it could be in private sector. I know that's my core. So the first thing you really have to figure out, Precious, is what is that thing that you want to leave behind as a legacy for yourself? Do you want to impact your society? Do you want to help somebody get to that next level? Like, what is it that you're super passionate about that drives you and keeps you awake and says, I haven't met that goal? Because we all have this little quiet voice that says to us, this is not where you need to be. And the discomfort we feel tells us this is not where we need to be. Now, in regards to your area where you said you studied petroleum engineering, I'm going to ask a very risky question. Is that something you always wanted to do, or was that something you felt you had to do? Is my first question.
Okay. So no, but something I always wanted to do. Funny enough, I always wanted to be an engineer and all of those things. And then I remember there was a time in primary school, they'd ask what do you want to become and all that. And I was like, I want to be an engineer. And then they were like, my teacher was like, there are other paths in it. It's like, okay, I think I want to do petroleum engineering. Petrochemical was what I chose the first time. And I came to very offering for petrochemical. So I think you've already had petroleum. So I was like, oh yeah, that's similar to where I wanted to, like what I wanted to do. So yeah, it was something that I've always wanted to do.
Okay. So my second question is, are you okay with being uncomfortable and pivoting to something that you're not familiar with?
I think I'm at that point where I'm just like, okay, maybe looking at the market and I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on with petroleum at the moment and all that. And so I'm looking at something similar to what I did in school, but not entirely, because petroleum is a very close path. So either you'll be working in a refinery or maybe with a petroleum industry or whatever, but I'm looking for something that it's versatile, like I can do it with any other company. But then again, I'm not losing the engineering path. I don't know if you understand that aspect, yeah, but so that's where I'm at right now.
So normally, Precious, and I'm asking you these questions for a reason, because normally the skill that you have from your engineering is pretty transferable to a project management, to if you want to. Pardon me?
I have that on my list. Project management. I have like 3 right now that I'm trying to see.
Can you tell me what they are?
The other one is operational procurement and management. So project management is one of them. And then the other one, I'm thinking of maybe consulting, but I don't know what it's where I don't like, it's foggy in terms of like, am I consulting as an engineer, or like how do I go about it? So that's that one. The third one is foggy, but the other two, they're pretty like I have a clear vision of what I want to do with the first two, but this consulting one is a little foggy for me at the moment. Yeah.
So here's how you could combine them. And like I said, this is my opinion. You take it and see if it sits right with you. I think you can totally combine consulting, project management, and engineering. So you have, this is what I'm going to push you or challenge you to do. Do you know of any engineers who will work with a consulting firm that you could have a conversation to ask them about, what does your day look like? Like, what do you do? You're a consultant for an engineering firm, but you're also a certified project manager. Talk to me about what that looks like, because you need to understand how it translates into the actual practice for you to see if there's something that you would be comfortable doing and happy doing every single day. Does that make sense? Because I think you can combine all three.
Yeah, I know it's operation. Oh, sorry, I think I'm talking a lot. I think with I think with operational management, because I love facilitating things, like being the place where I'm making things happen, right? I run a catering business, so I literally see the day-to-day operation of the business and all of this. And so I've been doing it for 2 years now. So I think I love planning schedules, but then again, the planning, not like my entire life, but I mean, I'm seeing my plan bring in a revenue, or maybe a satisfaction, or whatever it is. But then again, I love all of those. Those are things I love doing. So I've seen one consulting office downtown. So my plan was to go see them, but I think they are closed because of the pandemic. Yeah. And so like I'm looking for who to go to, and be like, I have a friend on this line right now. She works as a project manager. So I'm like, maybe I'll go to her for a few nuggets and all of that, and see how I can navigate my life through.
No, no, Precious, that is actually a really good field to be in right now, and I'm going to tell you why. COVID-19 has shown us that if our careers are not agile or easy to pivot or use our transferable skills, we get kind of left behind. So I think you have everything in your toolkit you need to get you to that next level. But I think your first step is you have a lot of doubt, maybe, or uncertainty about what does the application of combining those three areas look like in practice. So I would say find an engineer or a consultant or somebody who's consulting as a project manager to have a conversation with, to see if they can give you some tips to make sure, one, you have all the tools in your backpack to be ready to hit the ground running if you get an opportunity. And if you see an opportunity to come up, to apply for it. Because I think we doubt ourselves to say, I don't have enough Canadian experience to apply for this particular position, that I don't think I will apply. You will never have 100% of what they're looking for in a job ad. I'm just going to put that out there. So long as you have 70% of it, you can learn the 30%. So just challenge yourself and have a conversation, have a coffee. And I find we as new immigrants, we are very uncomfortable. And I had to learn this, to have a virtual coffee or coffee with somebody that we want, just to say, I'm struggling with this. I want to know more about your field. Would you be willing to have a conversation for me? People like to talk about what they do, so people will make the time to talk to you about what they do. That's what I've learned. So I would encourage you to have a conversation. If you have a friend who's a project manager, just ask, what do you do? How did you get there? What were the steps you followed? Just ask. And I keep going back to just ask and put yourself out there a little bit.
Does that help you, Precious?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So I see Edith say, I can totally relate with you, Precious. Anybody else relating with that? Where you are, I feel like especially for those who, came in here in their adult life, I think there's some form of, especially if you were working before and you moved here, right? For someone like me, even with the fact that I'm still within government, which is what I was doing before getting to Canada, it's still different. So it still feels like a transition to something else. Yeah, I say Funk saying she relates as well. So it's something that I see Adiola say she relates as well. It's something, or maybe she has a question, but it's something that we all can relate to in some form or the other, right? That you're trying to pivot, right? And from one thing to another that's completely different. Adiola, do you have a question, or are you just relating to what Precious is saying?
Both of them, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Martha, for sharing your knowledge, and thank you to the host too for putting this up for every one of us. I just wanted to say that it's a gift to be able to say I'm in engineering and I can pivot it to do this. Sometimes we look at the experiences that we have and we just make it so little, and then you tell it to somebody else and they're able to just amplify it and relate it. It's a skill, and I'm just thinking, how do we get that? I am a registered nurse. I work in public health, and sometimes I'm looking at this position, they're asking for this. I'm like, how do I take my experience as a registered nurse to fit this requirement for this job? It's a skill. I'm just thinking, how do we get to that place where we begin to have this critical appraisal of what we are doing to be able to match the jobs that are out there?
That's a great
That's a great question. Thank you, IVK. Sorry, Adiola. Thank you. And I was actually going to bring us back to, there's another question. I was going to bring us back to the conversation before, you had to took your Precious, which was very beneficial to everyone as well. On, okay, you say we should sit down to identify the skills that we have that tells us what value we bring to the table. Now, let's even say we've identified those skills. How then do we market those skills to position ourselves for what we want? I don't know if you want to take Kofo's question, or do you want to answer this first before you take Kofo's question?
So I think before I take Kofo's question, I want to respond to Adiola. Did I say it right? Adiola's comment about the thing is the jobs when they're posted are based on a competency. Okay, so it's really important that, and it's different to what we're used to. Like back home, you just put all the things that you've done in your role, and you think, yeah, that's a reflection of how I am able to do this job. But here in Canada, it's focused on competency. Do you have the competency, for example, a competency to lead people? And one of the things you need to be able to lead people is, are you a strategic thinker? Can you see beyond the today for like 5 years down the road? So these are the competencies that you need to position in your resume. So now that you've known your strengths, you need to take your strength and do a mapping. And I don't want to make it sound super complicated for you, but you map that to the competency. So for example, you're a registered nurse, you work in a high pressure environment, you have to navigate multiple priorities. These are skills. So managing priorities, managing in a high-paced environment, that shows your ability to move in a fast-paced environment. So the competency that this is going to align to is ability to navigate incongruency. So that would be a competency like we would say strategic orientation. How quickly are you able to adapt to a fast-paced environment, make a decision, build a strategy, and decide of what the next steps are. So I think we haven't been taught, unfortunately, and in the Caribbean as well, how do we take the things that we do and we put it in a category of a competency? And I think that's what I said. So the first thing, know what your strengths are, but knowing how to take those strengths and map them in to a competency is the next step. And sometimes you cannot do that yourself. So you may have to actually get a help of an HR professional or somebody who works in maybe the learning and development field to help you talk you through what are these strengths are and how they map into a resume for you to be able to say, okay, here's the competencies that I have that shows I'm eligible to apply for this job. So does that answer your question, Adiola, a little bit?
A lot. Thank you so much.
And the thing is to what I've learned, and I had to learn this because I always get my resume reviewed by an HR professional. I always do. I'm going into a particular job. I'm not sure if I've mapped my skill sets properly to the job requirements. I always have somebody else double check to see if I've done it correctly, because the interviewer or the person doing the screening is going to see, does this person have, like, the competencies could be like communication skills, it could be interpersonal skills, it could be accountability. How do you show you're an accountable person? How do you show that you could manage crisis management? So there are various competencies that people will be looking for, but I want to be able to take that and show that effectively. So sometimes getting a second opinion or having somebody else review your resume, you should always do that. And I don't want to sound like a stuck record. Get somebody to review your resume. And your resume is a window into your abilities. There's this rule, it cannot be more than 2 pages. I would say take that rule and throw it out of the window. That's my personal opinion. Your resume is a tool into your story. You need to make sure you position everything in your resume that will say to the person screening, wow, that is an interesting person. I really want to have a conversation with them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And if I may add to that, most companies have their competencies for specific type positions on their website. If you can't find, talk to their HR person to say, hey, I'm looking at this position. Do you guys have like a list of your competencies and what they mean? I find, for instance, that with Government of Saskatchewan, the competencies are sort of defined a little differently from Government of Canada, right? So it's not going to be a one blanket approach. A blanket approach to what applies in the private sector may not apply in the public sector as regards to competencies. Government of Saskatchewan, for instance, they do have their competency listings, and they do have the competencies that they're looking for with specific type positions or related positions. And if you can't find an HR person to help you review your resume in those instances, also find someone who maybe is like a hiring manager in a similar position, right? And let them review your resume. And if that fails, hey, coach here, feel free to reach out, but it's not free. All right, that's the only thing I'll tell you. Also, but the major thing is that you also have to be willing to put in the work. And one other thing with regards to even applying for positions to competencies is look at the position itself. And it is work. Honestly, I won't lie to you and say it's easy. It is work. All right. And when you know how they define competencies, the competencies they're looking for in a particular position will not always jump at you. It's not always going to be straightforward. They can mask it in things like, they'll say maybe something around the lines of, you must know how to manage multiple conflicting priorities, right? That in itself is part of a leadership skill or competency that you need to develop, right? And you just have to sit down with that job description, figure out what are the competencies that they're really speaking to here. If they are straightforward, oh, well and good. If they're not, then you want to sit down and map it out for yourself and then speak to those competencies in your resume and cover letter. So that's just an extra bonus there. Kofo.
Hi, Martha.
Hi, Kofo.
My question is about the little voice in your head that tells you are not there yet. What happens, because I'm currently hearing the voice is so loud now. What happens when you are in a position or in a situation where you feel you have to stay there at least for a while before you can answer to that voice?
So that's an excellent question, Kofo. So my comment to that is, the louder the voice gets, the louder the voice gets, it's also a way of telling you, okay, the time for you to get going is coming really close. But in the meantime, and I'm by no means saying that this is going to be a perfect scenario, maybe there are things you have to wait on, maybe documents you have to wait on. It's what am I going to do in the meantime to prepare me for when it's time to move? And then I could just move and have no regrets. So I always talk to it's so funny. My former colleagues at the university would tell you, I always talk about an exit strategy. I always have an exit strategy. No matter when I go to an organization, I always say to the hiring manager, for example, my commitment to you is 3 to 4 years. But by the third year, I'm thinking, what's the next move? Is it the right move? And I always pray about it. And before I make any big decisions, I always go and I pray about it. And some people find that's weird, but it's for me, that's what has been my saving grace. So the voice is getting louder for you, Kofo, because I think it's telling you the time to move on is coming. And it's also challenging you are you ready to move on? So you really need to assess, what is it I need to be doing or preparing for because when the time for you to move on comes, it's going to happen so fast, you wouldn't even know. You're going to have whiplash and be like, what just happened? So what are you doing to prepare yourself so that you can get ready to move on? And my only thing is, don't compromise your values in staying where you are. If it's hurting you, then know if you have to leave before you are, God always has a plan. That's what I'm going to say. Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you. It really does. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Precious, is your hand back up? Like you have a question?
Yeah, last one.
Okay. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think last year and this, I've had a lot of people send me jobs and they'll be like, oh, apply for this job, I think you qualify, and then I'll go through the requirements for the job. And then when I finally get to the point where I want to apply, they'll ask for, are you a permanent resident? Are you a citizen? And all this. And then in mind, I'm just like, at the end of the day, you still get to that point where I have to put what my what's it called again, if I'm a PR or whatever, and I'm like, they're still going to pick their people anyway. So why do I even need to bother about this job? So like, how do I get to that point where maybe talk myself out of, I think at least just put it there, at least just to see if they're going to pick you or not, instead of you getting to that point where you're like, they're going to pick like that self-doubt, like they're going to pick their people anyways. They're going to pick the PR, they're going to pick those with the citizens before they even consider an immigrant. So like, I don't know if you ever experienced that experience at like your first time here, and how did you overcome those the questions in your head and all that? Yeah.
That's interesting. You like, first of all, I want to dispel the myth that they're going to pick their people, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about they're going to pick their people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you don't put your name in the hat, then how are you going to even get the opportunity to get called out? So that's the second thing. In my experience, I have not had that experience, because I see every disappointment as an opportunity for something to learn from it. And I don't take it, I'm not trying to minimize anyone's experience. I'm just saying I look at it in a very different, I frame it differently. So I always say that God has a plan and he knows the path that he wants you to follow. And I found every time I've been resistant to what that path is, I get disappointed. So like, he's trying to redirect you and you're like, no, I don't want to go here. This is where I want to go. I'm applying for that job. And then you get the job and you're like, oh my goodness me. Like, he probably knew better. And then I was just, and then I'm like, oh, I didn't listen to that small, still voice in me telling me, no, not yet, Martha. This is not the place. Like, I use that a lot to guide me in the decisions that I make. So to your question, Precious, you are telling yourself one story about what you're thinking is happening, but the only way you can actually dispel that is if you actually try and just put your application in. I mean, Yes, there are processes where they tell you that you have to be a permanent resident or citizen. I've hired people who are not permanent residents or citizens. Like, so I wouldn't, don't let that cloud your mind, and don't let that prevent you from applying. You just have to keep at it, because I think by you telling yourself that, you sell yourself short a little bit. Does that help at all? And I don't want to make you think that this is all perfect utopia and we don't have struggles. I have my struggles too, but I try to frame it differently.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, really, 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 really interesting. I'm having a really swell time so far, and I'm learning a lot personally too. I'm learning a lot, and I really hope that that's the same for everyone. Um, okay, it low-key sounds like we're often afraid of failing or afraid of getting a no. How about the chance of getting a yes or getting the success with desire? Go ahead, Martha.
Can I say something about that? And I'm telling you this because I have struggled with it my entire life, okay? I would say I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I'm being completely honest, okay? And I have failed. I have failed in my life. And when I look back at the failure, I realize that there was a lesson in this that I just didn't see at the time. So I feel like I would say to my mom, I remember having this conversation. I said, Mom, why was it? I would go to school, I would come back, I would get 92, and I would be told, well, what about the other 8%? I was like, why didn't you ever celebrate the 92? Because I felt like I constantly had to be perfect. I constantly had to have it together. I constantly had to just be the perfect child, employee, person, woman, whatever. And I got exhausted. And I can tell you, we have been taught that failure is bad, but failure is opportunity. And I stress this with you wholeheartedly. The framing of what has happened to you is so important. And that's why I keep going back to what I said at the very beginning. You got to do the work. You got to do the work and disrupt all the things you've believed about yourself, the things you've been told about yourself, the things you've seen about yourself on television. You got to do the work, and you got to challenge this. And I can tell you, I was saying to and I feel probably God knew I was going to be saying something today, because I told you this week has been a challenging week for me, because all of the things that I'm talking to you about, we just came full head on. It's like, why do I feel that if I'm not perfect, I'm not good enough? I am good enough. We are all chosen. God always has a bigger plan for us, and are we able to embrace and step into that grace that He's given to us? So I think we have to disrupt the notions or what we've been taught about failure. Failure is an opportunity. It's a door closing that was actually meant to be closed to take us to where we actually needed to be. So I really appreciate your comment about failure. And I've just been like, you know what? I don't know the answer to this question. I'm going to go do the work and research, and I'll come back to you. And then I'm okay with that. And being okay with that takes even more courage than trying to be perfect all the time. So that's oh my God, I feel like I'm preaching.
No, it's great. Really, it is great. And I love it. And sometimes what we need is just a little encouragement, right? Mm-hmm. And all that. And with regards to what you even just mentioned with opportunity, even when there's seeming failure, one thing I even want to say, and for Precious and for everyone as well, is this: in times when you even put your name in the hat, you apply for that job and you don't get it, right? Send an email to the HR and say, hey, I applied for this position. I was hoping that I could get an interview at the very least, and I did not. And even if you got the interview and didn't get the job, try and do the same as well, right? And say, what would you have loved to see in my resume to make me stand out, right? Now, you're doing a number of things, which is the next thing we're going to get into to kind of maybe start wrapping up here, is you're doing two things. One, you're making your name known. There is no way that HR professional would ever forget that there was someone called Precious or someone called BC who did something nobody else would do, which is reach out to say, what would you be looking for? So the next time, or if another opportunity comes my way, I know how to best position myself for that. And if it's an interview, you got the interview and you didn't get the job, do the same thing. Reach out to the hiring manager and say, hey, I felt like I did great at this interview. Can you walk me through, give me a review of what I could have done better next time? Now, will that always play out? No. Martha knows one of my stories where I was very frustrated because I didn't get the review that I was looking for, and it was said to me in a very passive aggressive way that really just, ugh. But there are tons of times that I have been able to refine better. I've seen lots of people who have been able to refine better by doing just that. And the next opportunity that came their way, they were able to nail it because they were armed with the right information on what to put on their resume, of what to say and not to say at the interview. So even when we don't get the job that we're looking for, sometimes it's an opportunity to get back to the drawing table, revamp ourselves and grow. And you also increase your network by doing that because there's somebody there who now knows you, right? I know the story of, I think, and this was, I can't remember who it was, but someone who did that, right? And the manager, the HR person in that organization knew them because they reached out and said, hey, I was looking for this opportunity. I didn't get it. Can you walk me through? And every time there was an opportunity that matched that person's interests and experience, this HR person would reach out and say, hey, there's this position. I think you should apply. And I'll put in a word for you. Someone you don't know doing that for you. Why? Because you took the step and you asked. You put yourself out there, right? And you ask for a review. Okay. Which brings me to the next. Okay, go ahead if you want to say something.
I have a comment to say about that. So there's two things. The first thing is being okay with the feedback that you receive. Because I think for us, we've been taught that feedback is bad. Feedback is great. It's a gift. I remember I have this really really dear friend who's a mentor to me, and she taught me feedback is a gift. Good, bad, constructive, not so great. It's a gift. You pull out from that feedback what is going to help build you up to get you to where you need to go. But the other thing you also want to do is when you position your request for asking for feedback, you don't want to seem like you're harassing for feedback. You're coming from, I said, this is a learning opportunity for me. Is there anything that you could give me that I haven't thought about that would help me better prepare for my next interview? So framing it from a learning opportunity approach and also seeing it as a gift is the best way to do it. So, but just be okay with it because sometimes people are not great at giving feedback, and that's okay. But just take what you need from it to move on to the next opportunity.
Awesome. Absolutely. All right. So we've talked about a number of things to position yourself. We've talked about identifying the obstacles that are in your way and dealing with those obstacles. Many of us here identify self-doubt, but I'm sure as we dig deeper, there's probably more on our list. So please identify what it is for you. If it's that you're lacking clarity in what you even need to do, if it's that you don't even know what path, lies ahead of you or what your options are, identify what those options are. Figure out what the obstacles are, and then and only then can you know how to deal with those obstacles. And some of the things we've talked about in dealing with the obstacles is sometimes just put yourself out there, ask for help, ask for feedback, ask for jobs to do, even if it's just volunteering, ask for things, to do, because then you position yourself in a way that speaks to credibility of the skills that you say you have. The other thing is identify the skill sets that you have, right? Once you know the skill sets that you have, it gives you the confidence of the value that you're bringing to the table. And part of that is also just, identifying and recognizing that you're pulling from your strength of one culture to navigate the next culture. And when, as you're in that process, that gives you an advantage. It gives you an edge. All right. And then disrupt the stories that are being told about you. All right. We don't want to keep being told who we are. Let's actually tell the world who we really are and not have them tell us who we are. You know yourself better. You know your stories better. You know your struggles better. You know your victories better. So please tell the story. All right. The more of us that are out there, I think of us as, think about it this way. It's that you're giving someone else an opportunity to have something to look up to. And I think we all, to some extent, owe the next generation that. And Martha speaks about legacy, right? So ask yourself, what legacy do I want to leave behind? And what path would help me get to fulfilling that legacy and then get on that path? All right. But disrupt the stories that are being told about you so that they don't tell the same stories about your daughters. All right. Because they can grow up with a different story. And then every opportunity is an opportunity. All right. I actually really like that says, be firmly flexible. All right. Every opportunity is an opportunity. So be open to opportunities. And again, back to asking, if there is an opportunity and no one is bringing it before you, then ask for it. All right. And then once you understand the skills that you carry, how to sell yourself one way to sell yourself is to, again, just put yourself out there. All right. And match the skill sets that you have to competencies. Understand the competencies in a job that you're applying for. Understand the competencies that are required in the job that you are in, even right now. All right. Understand those competencies and learn what you need to learn to grow in those competencies. Or if it's for a job that you're looking to get, learn what you need to develop in those competencies to position yourself for that job. Martha, I usually for our reviews we do 2 hours, but I'm hoping to get everyone out here a little under 2 hours. If unless we want to stay the whole 2 hours, but it would be nice to just get a little break for everyone, especially those who are in the book club. One question that I have. Before I go into the question, there's some comments. Yes,
I saw some really good comments in there.
Absolutely. This is very timely. Absolutely. Asking for help is very vital. We sometimes see asking for help as a sign of weakness. No, it is not. As a matter of fact, it is a strength because you recognize that first, you're human. You recognize that you need other people. And it means that you recognize a gap in your own life and you are responsible to yourself and those around you to fill that gap and be better. So it is definitely not a sign of weakness. Thank you for that, Funke. Okay, so Martha, there's one piece I want to talk about, and we hear about this a lot, and I don't remember her name right now. Okay, let me take the questions, the hands that I'm seeing. Precious, is your hand still up, or you just never put it down, or you have another question?
No. I don't know why it's still there, but no, I don't have any question.
I think I can lower it for you. BC, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martha and Sister Anita, for putting this together. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to really comment on what Funke said earlier. I used to be in that situation as well, where, I would want to ask questions, but I would just be like, what, no, maybe I shouldn't ask. But one thing I learned from one of my prof at school was that, put in your own work and don't make it seem like you're giving the other person a job to do. So like get your own things, like get your own tips and like whatever you need to do, put it together. So if you're coming to that person, it'll be more like, oh, I've done so and so. What do you think about what I've done so far? So it comes from a place of, okay, you know what, I've put in my own effort. I just need maybe a little bit of your own expertise to help me improve on what I've done or what I have. But the question I have is in terms of when we say we should have a mentor and all of those stuff, I find it a little hard because sometimes you really admire people and you see things in people. But do you, I don't know, like it sounds weird, but do you go to the, like, because it would be nice if it can be as natural as possible that, you guys can just find a neutral ground where everyone just, you just understand, you go with the flow kind of a thing. But in situations where you're not able to go with the flow, how would you advise that one goes about, finding a mentor. And for me, like, there's that awkwardness of the first conversation. Okay, what are we going to talk about? Do I just start bringing up my questions, or do I tell them everything I like about them? You know, you don't really know how to start, and you're hoping that they won't take all of those good vibes and energy wrongly, that, oh, you're just coming to put so much pressure or so much concern or things towards them, right? So I don't know if you can help with that.
That's a great question. So I'm going to tell
Sorry,
you.
and that question was actually right where I was going.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to mention, let me just add to it if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to mention that in the journey of career, you know, we hear a lot about mentors, and there's a lot about networking, which honestly, it's a whole conversation on its own. But I wanted to actually hone in on that mentorship. Two things actually that I wanted to hone in on that people talk about: mentors and sponsors, right? Mentors and sponsors. First of all, are they even the same thing? If they're not, how are they different? You know, and how do we then position ourselves as people who someone will desire to mentor? So thank you so much, Bissy, for that question.
Yeah, like that's a perfect segue. So to your question, are mentors and sponsors the same thing? I look at it slightly differently. And here is my thinking. I think you start your relationship off at a mentor relationship. And as the relationship evolves or amplifies or expands, these mentors can become your sponsors. So that's how I see it. I see a gradual progression and an interconnection between the two. Now, the thing about the awkwardness, first of all, it's natural that the first interaction will feel awkward because you're trying to assess, is this a good fit for me? And the person is going to see, how can I help impart my knowledge to this person? So my first thing is, don't go in with expectations of what that person will be and will not be. That person is going to be a teacher to you, and they are going to impart knowledge, but there's never one mentor. So I have a group of 5. So I don't have one mentor. I have 5 mentors and one who's probably become a sponsor. And the reason is I look for particular skills in each of them that I need to build in myself. So you will never find all the skills that you're looking for, busy, in one person. You may find it in a combination of people. The other thing I would say is your mentors or sponsors, one, they should look like you, but they should also be from the culture that you're trying to understand. And I'll explain to you why I take that approach. I think somebody who's like us, as a visible minority woman like us, will bring a particular lens and experience that will help position us of how to navigate the spaces that we are in. But I think our other colleagues who may be white, Canadian, born and raised here, are there, I call them the cultural translators that will help us to navigate the corporate world or the public sector world that we're in. So whenever I confront something at work that I've never seen, nor in my experience in St. Lucia or anything, I go to one of my mentors who's now like a sponsor, and I said, help me understand, this has happened to me. I don't know what's going on here. And then they will take me back to say, have you thought about looking at it from this lens? So I use 2 different streams of how I build my repertoire of and I'll answer your question, Funke, in a second. How do I build my my repertoire of mentors and sponsors? I want somebody who looks like me, who understands my lived experiences and can relate and can help guide me as to things to avoid and to be cautious of. And then I use my other group of mentors to help me navigate the culture that I'm trying to understand. So they're like my cultural translators. So to your question, Funky, how do you find them? Get people to refer you to your mentors. Because if I have found that if somebody refers me to somebody, the receiving person is more open to wanting to be a mentor to me. So for I'll give you an example, one of my mentors was my husband referred me and said, I think you might be a really good person to talk to in this particular area. Very similar background with you, has a lot of experience in public service. Maybe you want to have a conversation. and I said, and I was introduced, an email connecting me to that person. And then I followed up and I set up a coffee. And it's been an ongoing, like, this person's been my mentor for the last 4 years. So that's kind of what somebody to introduce you to. But also, you kind of have to be a little bit brave, which is not something we are used to from the cultures that we come from, to say, I am wanting to build my knowledge in project management, for example. I noticed that you have consulting services and project management. I wanted to know, would you be open to having a coffee with me to help me understand what does this work entails? Like I said at the beginning, people like to talk about their experiences. So it's about, how can I learn from you and how can you help me understand this field? So I always say, and I go back to what I said, open the door for the people behind you. If I know somebody in my network that I think will be able to help Anita or help Kofo, I will say, I know this young woman who is really good in this policy area. Would you be willing to have a conversation with her about it? And then you facilitate the bridge and open the door for the person. And that's what we don't do enough in our immigrant community. We don't build bridges. We don't open the door for each other. We just want to be okay with, I'm only going to focus on what I can do for myself, and then everybody else figure it out for themselves. If we would just learn to work together to build bridges for each other, I think we'll be in a way better position. Does that answer your question, Busy?
Thank you so much, Martha. That did. Thank you.
So, like, just use your networks, people in your churches, friends of your kids, like parents of your kids, like, network, use your network and leverage it to help you get to where you need to go. And there's nothing wrong in asking for help.
Thank you.
Does that help your question as well, Funke?
It does partially, but my question was mostly in terms of, so I'm in IT. I'm an IT project coordinator right now, and there are not that many, to start with, that many women, and then women of color who are IT project managers or in the technical field. So I'm wondering, if you're in that situation where there isn't that representation of women or women of color, then how do you find mentors that are like you?
So my follow-up question to you, and thank you for clarifying your question, Funke, is do you have a good relationship with do you have a good leader or manager that you work with that you could connect in with and ask, or not really? I don't know your context, so I'm just asking.
I do. I have my team lead she's a good mentor in terms of, like, we relate mostly in terms of assistance with work, so like the technical aspect, but not really in the mentorship. So I'm also in government, but I find that in my ministry, kind of, there isn't that pathway for progression, right? Or there isn't, like, we don't really have that conversation of where do you see yourself in the next 2 years, as I've seen with other ministries. So that's something I'm trying to figure out, is if I'd like to advance my career, for example, who would I be talking to? Because I've seen that even when we have like our work plan reviews, it's not really of how can we help you get better, if that makes sense.
So I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Have you asked the question and not received a clear answer? I'm just curious.
I've brought it up in terms of, I'd like to see myself here. So in part of my work plan was I would like to work with maybe senior project managers who can teach me or who can show me how things are done. But the senior project managers that I'm working with are mostly all men. And I believe there's only maybe one man of color who is a senior project manager. So we don't really have that representation.
So I'm thinking in this case, Funke, your option is you're going to have to look outside. So is there anybody in your network who knows any project managers outside of your area?
Well, probably I'll have to do the work to find people who would be able to connect me with other people.
And I think, and I keep going back to that, I think don't let it your current context will be the only context you look within. my mentors are outside of the area that I work. I have one internally, but the others are all outside because I want a different perspective. I don't want in group thinking. I want a different perspective to challenge me. So I think in your case, are you on LinkedIn at all, Funke? I'm so
Yes, I am.
You are? Okay. Okay. Do you leverage and use your LinkedIn a lot? Because I've had random people reach out to me and ask me to review resumes and stuff for them that I've done it. So have you really spent time and built your profile on LinkedIn? Is my next question.
It's built to an extent, but I actually don't reach out like cold calling or, just reaching out to people that I don't really know randomly. Yeah.
This is a little bit out of the comfort zone because that's kind of how recruitment is happening right now, just to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of the cold calling and saying, like to join your network, here's what I'm looking for. Will you be willing to offer some advice? It's happening a lot now on LinkedIn because of the new virtual world but you got to be okay with the discomfort that comes with it.
Yeah.
Okay. I will look for you on LinkedIn and I'll add you, Funke.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Great. LinkedIn. Yes. I get a lot of messages I do have some great friends now in my network that reached out to me through LinkedIn. There's someone I reached out to as well recently. That was more business related than career, but he was doing something that I wanted to do. And I reached out and we had a very great conversation, and he's been really helpful sending some resources since then, so yeah. And most of us probably already get the cold call from people who are trying to tell us about side hustles. I don't know if anybody's been getting those messages. And I remember receiving one of those one time and I said, what am I doing getting all these messages and getting frustrated when I can use the exact same method to reach out to people who I need things from, right? So it's not a comfortable place, quite frankly, not even for people who are very outgoing and extroverted like myself. But so I can imagine if you're an introvert having to put yourself out there like that, it can be a tough ask, but it's something that is needed. All right. So it's part of the process.
Yeah, but it's also not the cold calling. And I think we have a perception of what the cold calling is. You're not trying to peddle something off. You're not trying to sell them something. You want an opportunity to learn from them. So it's the positioning of how you create the messaging that you put out there. It's really important. So I get random people just say, can I join your network? And I was like, okay. But if I see somebody with a similar background to me, I usually add them because I think maybe that might be a learning opportunity, not now, but later down the road. So I do understand the cold calling, but it's a level of discomfort that we have to navigate in this new current context.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a comment here and it says, in positioning and for promotion, is there a specific way to make yourself seen or your work stand out and own it without appearing arrogant? I don't know if it's just me, but sometimes you do something great, shy to put ourselves out there to say, yes, I did that. And this is a very great point. I understand if we don't put ourselves or our work out, we won't be recognized when possible advanced positions come up. And this speaks about visibility and owning up to work that we do. How do we navigate that?
Great question. So the visibility piece, I will put it to, if I were to put my marketing hat on, I would say it's about building your personal brand. And I feel like a lot of, that takes a lot of work. You gotta, I have this crazy, I call it your 2 to 3 minute elevator speech. So if somebody meeting for the first time, what do they remember about yourself? And how do you make yourself memorable? Is the first thing I would say. Another thing that I would say that helps to position us, and you're not bragging. I feel we have to disrupt a lot of the thinking by saying, you know what, here's my work, here's what I've done. That is not bragging. That is simply putting yourself out there to say, this is what I have accomplished. The first thing I would say, depending on the environment that you are in, is put your hand up for what we would call a stretch project, something that you wouldn't typically do, but it's something that you're interested in. It will help to build, like, let's say you want to build your project management skills, and then there's a new project that your unit, branch, or area is working on. Put your hand up to say, can I sit on this project committee? Can I be a part of this project? Is there something you could assign me that I could take ownership for? And delivering on that. So that's the first thing. And that also helps build the visibility you're looking for, but also build the personal brand. Say yes. Say yes when you're approached with opportunities, and don't think you need to have it all figured out. Just say yes. And I learned that from one of my colleagues who would say, you never seem to be afraid of taking on something. I said, well, if I fail at it, you know what? At least I learned something new and how not to do something. So it's okay. If I fail, I'm okay with it. And being okay with failure is really a big piece of that ability to say yes for if you're given an opportunity. So I'd say build your personal brand, put your hand up for stretch opportunities, join committees if you're able to join them within your organization. And even though those committees are volunteer work, do the work well, like it's a job, because people will take notice of it and they won't see it as you're bragging to say that you've done something. And I think the fourth piece is going back and being okay with celebrating your wins, like your small wins before. I think we focus so much on the going forward, we never take a moment to look back on that. I think that's also how you position yourself. You put yourself out there saying, I have done all these things. Here's how I think I can contribute to this project or this environment or this job. Celebrating your wins is also a critical piece to positioning yourself. And I think that's what I would say at a very high level. Does that answer the question?
Edith, does that help? I think it was even more of a comment than.
Oh, it was more of a comment. Okay.
Yeah. And I think one thing if I can add is that, in the arrogant space, to not look arrogant when you're talking about the work that you've done. I'm pretty sure it was probably, okay, sorry, it was a question. I'm pretty sure you did not do everything by yourself. So if there is a piece that someone else contributed to, no matter how minute that piece must have been, acknowledge them, all right? Acknowledge them openly and say, special thanks to this person for your contribution in making this project a success, right? So that way it takes away the feel of arrogance, because you're acknowledging that, this was a team effort, right? Someone did something to contribute. And even if it was something you had to do individually and it wasn't on a team basis, acknowledge the person who gave you the opportunity at the very least to say, thank you for the opportunity. This was a learning curve for me. And these were some things that these are some things that I'm coming out of this with that I've learned, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So that way it diffuses any feel of arrogancy that might come with it. And I know you're right. Sometimes I struggle with that. In fact, it's so much more that even when someone acknowledges what I do, I doubt that they really enjoyed the work or that it's really as excellent as they say it is, right? And it's part of the things that we all have to learn to keep working on ourselves to own our successes. As much as we like to own our failures a lot more than we like to own our successes, right? So yes, very great question. All right, so okay, go ahead, Martha.
One last comment and I will shush and then we'll be done. I think we've been taught that speaking about what you do makes you seem arrogant, and I think it's a misconception that we've been taught. But women specifically have that challenge. When a man does something, he has no problem saying, I have done X, Y, and Z. But like we have been taught that we're supposed to be quiet, we're supposed to not be so vocal about our successes. But we're not being speaking about what you have done in a compassionate, kind way is not being arrogant. It's just I'm speaking my truth and I'm sharing my story. So I think culturally we've been taught that talking about our what we've done in the past is you need to appear humble, you need to be quiet. I'm not saying that, I mean, there are arrogant people out there, don't get me wrong. I'm saying there's people who are really arrogant, but so long as you acknowledge that you couldn't have, you know that you've done this, but you know that you couldn't have done it without the grace of God. Like, you know, just coming from that lens. But I think men don't have a problem talking about all their accomplishments. So why do we feel we have to minimize ours to just so we're not seen as arrogant? And I struggle with that a little bit, but that's just and just being okay. And I agree with that. We should be okay with just saying thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate it, and move on. Good point, Busy. I really like that comment. And I will hush now.
No, it's been a great day. How many of us have had a fun time here? If this has really been helpful for you, say something in the chat, put up a thumbs up, whatever, give it a clap, whatever, right? It's been a really, really, really great time, and I have enjoyed the conversation. Martha and I actually, let me let you in on the back end story. Martha and I tried to decide if she was going to do a slide or we should just make it conversational, and we decided on conversational. And I think that it's really been great. It's been of great value to all of us. This is part of my own little way, and even Martha's way, of opening the door for someone else, because sometimes opening the door for someone else means that you're giving them the information that they need to make the decisions they need to make to move forward, right? Or giving them, letting them in on some of your knowledge base that you already have. Those who have gone ahead of us, they know something, they've seen something that we might not know, right? And it's important that we help each other. I need to give you my shoulders for you to stand on. You need to give someone else your shoulders for them to stand on. All right. It will be nice, really nice that, I can walk to, say, PSC tomorrow, or there's a position in PSC, and I can tell someone like Homie and be like, hey, there's a position I'd really love to, and she'll be able to put in a word for me if that's acceptable, and say, hey, do a little referral. Some companies do employee referrals, right? And they take it pretty seriously. If an employee refers someone, and they want to actually give that person a chance, at the very least look at their resumes or whatever it is, or give them an interview, I should be able to get that opportunity to give that opportunity to someone else, or you should be able to give it to a different person as well. So it's been a great time. As much as we don't want it to end, it has to end. So please, ladies, we will continue with our reading next month. And for those who have been in the book club, I'm sure you've heard pieces of one of the books specifically that we've read. I don't know, a little fun quiz. Those in the club, some of the things we've talked about today, it sounds like something that comes out of one book in particular. Anybody want to tell me what that is? Which book that is? The book clubbers. Don't let me start calling.
Is it the critical thinking?
Which one? Yes. Black faces, white places. Yes, black faces. Thank you, Tayo. Black faces, white places. So honestly, those books are intentionally picked with the goal of getting us to challenge ourselves, to be better, to do better. Like Funk said, sometimes you won't find your kind anywhere around you, but like to Martha's points, can you find them elsewhere? Because all we really need for ourselves sometimes, the reason we're looking for someone that looks like us in those positions, is to remind ourselves that it can be done, that we can get there. And so when you're not seeing them in your immediate space, if you can find them elsewhere, that is great. Take advantage of that. Even if you're going to learn from them from a distance, either by reading their books or whatever it is that you get to do. Black Magic by Chad Sanders. Great. Is Ife still here? She left. Okay, I'll take that out of the chat box so I don't lose it. And I will save that on my notes here. Thank you, Martha. All right, so if you don't find what you're looking for in your immediate environment, step out of that space as well, and even through books, you can see that someone else has done it, and you may not have direct access to them, but you can leverage their story, their experience, which is why people write books, is they hide the experiences that they've had, the knowledge, the wisdom, they hide them in books, and it's up to you and I to seek out that knowledge. I'm a Christian too, so sometimes I'll definitely throw out some Bible verses. All right, even the Bible talks about that. Seek understanding, right? Find wisdom, right? And so some of the ways we seek it is through books. So if you haven't been a part of the book club, yes, this is me selling the book club to you now. Get on board. Get on board. It's free. You don't even have to, the way we design it, you don't have to read all the chapters in the book, right? We each read different chapters, and then we come here and we help, share the knowledge of the different chapters we've read. So everybody walks away feeling like they've read the whole book, right? It's the vision of labor, teamwork, yay. All right, so thank you so much, Martha. It's really, really been so grateful to be here. It's an honor really to have you in my life. Yeah, I remember when she said to me, ask your manager to mentor you. He sounds like a great person. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Lucky for me, my manager got to ask me and say, hey, I'd be happy to mentor you. I see potential in you, and I'd be happy to mentor you if you're open, right? In case your story doesn't end that way, please, you ask them. Sometimes they're even more willing than we realize. People want to help us. There are people who do want to help us, but we would never know if we keep our mouths shut and we never ask. So thank you again, Martha, for being here. It's really been a great time. And thank you to everyone. For those who are joining us for the first time here, Abby, Coleman, let me see who else is in the space for the first time. Alexandra, Kofo, Eniola, Emanuela, Precious, thank you. Thank you guys for being here. And to all the people who have always been part of it, BC, Funks, Tayo, Deborah, Edith, BC. Oh, well, the other BC is not here today. All right, thank you guys for always being here. It's really encouraging. It's one thing to put a program together. It's another thing for people to actually show up and engage and participate. The link to the video will be sent out for benefit of everyone who couldn't make it. And for those who maybe want to go back and rewatch, the link will be sent out before the end of day today. All right, so that's it. Martha, do you want to say anything, or this is it and we can go?
My final comment is embrace your difference. Be proud of it. It doesn't make you less competent. It actually makes you more powerful. So embrace it and step into it, and just try to live each day. Let people know this is my story, and tell your own story. Don't let anybody tell your story. You tell your story.
Absolutely.
That's what I would say.
That is great. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And if you want to join the Ladies Arise community, there's a Telegram group if you want to join. That will come in the email that goes with the link as well. So watch out for that. Thank you once again, and take care. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Barry.
Bye.
I hear your voice.
Bye.